Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Petruzzi. I'm the Director of Design and Digital Media here at the Teaching Learning Technology Center. And today we're going to go through a workshop here about academic poster presentations. So this is a session that we offer usually around the springtime, leading up to the Petersheim Academic Exposition here on campus for faculty, students, and staff who are presenting on campus and looking to create an academic poster. So an academic poster is when you go to a poster conference and you see the lineup of people sharing their research, usually a large format poster, 48 by 36 inches, 56 by 40 inches, usually around that size, but the large banner style posters that are displaying all of the research that students and faculty have been going through and that are presenting not only at the Petersheim Academic Exposition, but at any conference that you might be going to where you're sharing your research and your work. So it's an interesting design issue to solve because it is a lot of information that you want to have displayed on the screen. So we run into these workshops that we run because we want to give people a baseline understanding of a series of graphic design principles that will help when you're creating your posters. So today we'll discuss some graphic design principles that are going to help you with layout and conveying your message and your calls to action to your viewers so that they are able to understand all of the information and take it with them when they go, whatever that call to action is, whether it's the conclusion of your research, whether it's a call to action to visit a website to learn more, or even just at a conference, a poster conference where you're presenting. I mean, the main call to action is for them to come and interact with you and talk to you about your research. So the poster acts as that billboard that we can then draw in the viewer and draw them into our research. So we're going to get started here and we're going to go through our presentation, and we're going to go through a couple of slides. So the first thing we always like to talk about here on campus is that we are an Adobe Creative campus. So all students, faculty, and staff have access to the Adobe Creative Suite. If you do not have access, you can go to shu.edu/Adobe for more information to sign up, and also additional resources about additional training offerings, not only from the Teaching Learning Technology Center, but also from Adobe. There's a whole Adobe learning space where you can go and find additional resources like tutorials, step-by-step videos, things like that. But if you don't have access, please go ahead and sign up. You can get access to the Adobe Creative Suite. So that includes everything from Adobe Premiere for video editing, Adobe Photoshop for photo and graphics, Adobe Audition for audio editing. We have a decent amount of people running podcasts here out of the innovation space, Innovation Hub, and then they are editing their podcasts with Adobe Audition. So a lot of great tools that you can use and that can give you kind of a little bit of a creative advantage. Today, the tool that we're going to talk about after we go through our graphic design principles is Adobe Express. So Adobe Express is a web-based editing tool that we have for the community that's available. It is a free tool, but also with our Adobe Creative Campus license, you get additional resources to be able to use with it, like some stock photography and additional storage with your Adobe Express account. So if you don't have access, go ahead, sign up, shu.edu/Adobe. And then, so what we want to do today is we're going to review those graphic design principles. And then we're going to use Adobe Express. And then also we're going to show you some PowerPoint templates too. So just some different options. So in the past, we've always done these sessions with PowerPoint because everybody mostly knows how to use PowerPoint. It's drag and drop, it's easy to use, and it's included in the Microsoft Office suite. So it was low barrier to entry so that everybody was able to use it. So now that we have Adobe, we can show Adobe Express as well, which is great because it's a web-based editing tool. So it will be a lot easier for us to share templates and share work and also collaborate with one another on the program. But we still have the option to show and go through how you would set up an academic poster presentation within PowerPoint. So what makes a good academic poster? When we're going through and talking about what really makes an academic poster, it's what I was saying about before, that think of the poster as your billboard. I know there's a ton of research that goes into it and a ton of content that we want to discuss when we're talking about our poster, and it is easy to get caught into the trap of, oh, I want to put all of my text on the poster, right? And fill up all 48 by 36 inches, right? We're talking about 4 feet of of content that like we want to make available to the user. But I don't think you should get caught into that trap of, oh, I need to include everything because it's part of my research. Think of it as the billboard. Think about it as the marketing and the advertising for not only yourself, but also your research. And it's a way for you to draw in the viewer to your research. So your poster should really be that visual summary. And I always like to think of, and I mentioned the billboard before and like advertisements, and whenever I'm designing anything or ever talking about design, I like to pull from all different types of design, whether it's like something that you see on a website, something that you see on TV, anything that's eye-catching, right? Something that's going to draw you in. And when we're talking about these academic posters, and specifically like the billboard and advertisement of it, I think it's always good to think of those viewing distances that your viewer is seeing your poster at, right? Think if I walk into a conference and it's a huge open conference space and there's tons of posters, hundreds of posters. People are walking through the aisles and they're going to see your research, see the other posters. But the first thing that they're going to see, or where they're going to see it from, is that like 10 feet, right? The 10 feet away, right? And then what are they seeing at that point? You're driving down the highway, you see a billboard, you see the large, right? The large imagery, the large header, some interesting text, the title, whatever it is, when they're walking through and seeing that from that 10 feet. So if I'm walking through a poster conference and seeing all these posters, the thing that jumps out to me at 10 feet is what's going to get me to go into that second level of interaction. So at 10 feet, maybe I see the header and it interests me, or I see an interesting image, a graph, something that pulls me in and makes me want to learn more. And that's when I get into that 6 feet, right? That 6 feet away. That's when I'm viewing the larger elements of the poster. So maybe this is like subtitles, maybe this is chunks of content, so I can actually see like the introduction. And so now I'm starting to be engaged, and I want to interact with the poster more. I want to read it. So I'm at that level where like, okay, now I actually have some interest, and then the viewer, the person walking through, is going to go into that second level, that last level, and within the 3 feet. And this is where I can read all of the content. So now I'm here and I'm engaged and I'm reading the poster. And so if you were giving a poster presentation, it's at this point where then you can make the interaction, provide that additional information, lead them to your call to action. If that's your conclusion, what your research was about, an additional piece of information, if you have an additional handout that you're handing to them, or just the information about what you're presenting and what your research represents. That's how you're getting it to them. So if you think about like a billboard, that call to action, we're always ending up at the bottom of a billboard, an advertisement, bottom right, we're seeing the call to action. What was the research? Where am I going? What does the creator of this want me to take away? And that's what we mean when we talk about our call to action, and hitting those levels from the 10 feet to the 6 feet to finally the 3 feet where they can read all of our content and make the decision about if they're interacting or taking our research here. So there's a lot of different ways we can do that from that 10 feet and how we can make the poster visually interesting, but also easy to visually understand. And the ways we can do that is through some design principles. So the first one would be contrast. So we talk about creating contrast in a bunch of different ways. And one of them obviously could be through color, right? Contrast between light and dark on the page, making things pop out onto the page. But we can also create contrast through size between items, right? Obviously we do that on our website, or when we're talking about web design, we create headers on the web page because they're larger, they stand out, and they provide hierarchy to our design. But they also create contrast from the other content on the page. So contrast between a header and body content. We're creating contrast so that our eyes and the viewer knows these two bits of information are chunked together and they relate to one another. But when we talk about contrast through color, we do it to make things stand out on the page, but we also think about color in terms of accessibility, right? To make sure that things are actually readable and legible. And it's easy to get caught up in contrast and thinking about opposite colors, right? And making sure that the colors pop off the page. And you might think, okay, I'll take two opposite colors and make them pop off the page, black and white, blue and white, as we see on the page here. But we have to think about colors in terms of their value, right? So we're not actually thinking about what color it is. We want to think about the value of that color. And I just mean really the lightness or darkness. So we can take, like on the left-hand side, we can take a really light or bright blue in that cyan, and then place it on top of that really dark like navy background, and think about how that pops off the page, similar to the white and the cyan on the right side, and think about how that will engage with the viewer and make it pop off the page and separate it from not only the background, but then if I have additional content on the page. But if I think about just colors and I'm not thinking about values, I could end up something that has bad contrast, right? Something like this where I'm using, okay, maybe I'll just use red and blue, but I'm not thinking about the lightness or the darkness of those colors. And I end up with something like this. And it actually creates like this vibrating effect around the text. You could see it's hard to read, and the edges become almost like your eyes, it's hard for them to focus on it because it's an example of bad contrast. Sure, they're different colors, red and blue, but they are both medium values, right? They're right in the middle. It's not too light, too dark. But when you lay one another on top of each other, it becomes really hard to read. And for the viewer, it not only becomes almost illegible, but it actually kind of hurts your eyes a little bit. The classic example is like if I'm trying to put yellow and white, right? Yellow text on a white background. We all know not to do it, but we see it sometimes, and it just becomes completely illegible. And so you're doing yourself a disservice because people can't read it, they're not going to interact with it, and they're not going to be able to see your content on the page. But an example of good contrast would be the dark color, the dark, really dark, I mean, that's actually blue, dark blue on top of a cyan background. So thinking about the lightness, the value of the color, and how it affects the what the viewer is seeing. A good way to do this, and I found this example online, a good way to do this is create your presentation in grayscale. Well, we do this a lot when we're talking about like text design, logo type, things like that, where we're working on a specific design, or like even like a logo or something, stripping out the color so that you know it works in grayscale, in black and white, especially if we're talking about like logo design. Think of any famous logo, like the Nike logo, it might even like the Seton Hall logo, Gatorade, all of these logos, sure, they have colors and they have primary colors that they're working with, but you know, because you probably have an article of clothing or something like that from Nike or one of the major brands where the logo is just black or it's just white and it works in single color. So sometimes designing for form and function like that outside of color is more important, and then can really lead you to be able to create really good contrast and make things stand out without thinking about color. Like the example on the page here, we're just taking these examples that we found and then creating them in grayscale. And you see on the right-hand side with the bad contrast, we have this dark red, this dark blue, and these colors that really blend into one another. And you see it on the slide in the bottom right there, like the date and the name. Once the gray on gray gets overlaid on one another, it's really hard to see. So definitely something to think about when you're working on your designs. Working on a poster, working on anything, take a look at it in grayscale in black and white. I mean, that's as simple as just saving as a PDF. Some programs will let you do remove color as an overlay, but I mean, really print a sample, print a smaller sample on a black and white printer, and then see what it looks like. And does it work? Does it have enough contrast? It's a really easy way to see that. So we mentioned contrast and creating visual hierarchy. So our next principle that we'll talk about is visual hierarchy, right? How do we create this hierarchy so that the user knows how to read our poster, our magazine article, our web page, so that they know how to logically step through. And that's what we talk about, like title size, section headers, separation, and emphasis on different sections to make sure that they know that bits of information go with one another, right? So we have a pretty simple example to show here. If you have a look at these two flyers, they're very simple, nothing crazy, and it's on purpose that we have placeholder content here. If you have a look at the two of them, which one looks more appealing or cleaner out of the two? If you're looking at the right-hand one and saying, oh yeah, the right-hand one, then yes. I mean, some of it's immediately apparent, but if you start to think about, well, why, right? It's the same content, same images, same headers. Like, why is the one on the right hand a little bit more appealing? And it's just that attention to detail, creating hierarchy, and creating form through not only the blocks, the elements, the images, the backgrounds on the page, but also creating form through text. You see on the left-hand side, the text is centered. It's hard to read. There's separating lines between the supporting text and the right-hand side, and everything just kind of gets squished together. Even though they tried to put lines between each of the sections to like make sure that you knew that each one was a separate section, it all just becomes one block. And at that point, it's just visual noise. Like, even though it is just fake text in there, it all blends together and it becomes visual noise. But on the right-hand side, we're creating form through text, through the white space and the negative space between items to allow that room to breathe and to create a hierarchy, not only through our design and through the blocks that are arranged on the page, but also through the actual headers, like the open house, the register today, and then the two sample items of placeholder text. There's those subheaders. We're creating form through those items so that the user knows, okay, I can easily digest these little bits of information throughout the poster. And then at the end, we're landing on our call to action. So if in this case, if this is a flyer for a registration for an open house, I immediately get the information. I know it's open house. I know that I can register today. I get the dates up top. And then at the end of it, I get my ultimate call to action, and that is the website, the contact information for the event, for whatever it is that I'm looking at. So thinking about that and thinking about creating hierarchy to make the visual of your poster a little bit more appealing and easier to read for your user. And the next one we'll talk about is balance and layout. And so I'll bump back to that example we just talked about, but really we want to make sure that there's an organization. When we're designing, we want to use a grid layout, so like PowerPoint and Express and any other design, you can do a grid overlaid on top of your design so that you can make sure things are aligned and balanced, and thinking about how we would use balance in our designs. So that might be in an symmetrical way or an asymmetrical way if you wanted something visually weighted to one side to draw the user's eyes. We have an example of one of our workshop posters where usually there's a big banner at the top and the title, but we do have one option where on the left-hand side there is a larger image, a larger column that has like some imagery we can use, a big title, and it's really left aligned and very heavily weighted to the left-hand side, but it's done purposely to draw the user's eye as they're walking through the conference area, right, where they're looking at these posters. So draw in the eye immediately with those larger elements, and then lean into the space on the other side so they can get the content. And then the next one, we talked about this in the example, but the use of white space, right? I mentioned it earlier, but I know it's easy to get caught up in, I need to put all of my research on this page and get everything on here. But if we do that, we get caught into the trap of just having a wall of text that becomes almost a headache to read for the user. So by thinking about white space and preventing that visual clutter, we can then create those sections for the eye to land on, right? So that we're not having them read that wall of text. Even as something as simple as this is just like an example of like a card, like a contact card that we'd use on like a website or something. And it's just a simple mock-up, but to show you about like, and if we're imagining that the lines on the right-hand side of the picture placeholder is text, trying to cram in all of that text in there with such a little line height is really hard, right? It's really hard for the user to differentiate content and to see that, okay, I have this intro image, a bit of text about what I'm seeing, and then maybe these are like contact photos, profile photos of the different team members. But by allowing a little bit of that room to breathe, it gives our space for our eyes to rest, right? And so that we can jump through content easily and see what the poster is about without having that almost overwhelming like visual. It's just too much text, too much visual that it becomes hard for the user to understand. Think of some of the best advertisements, some of the best websites, right? Everything's going to have the white space to allow the content to breathe. And then so what we want to look at for an academic poster specifically, when we're talking about how we're going to put those together, we want to include all of this information, right? So like stepping through, and you can see how we can do a hierarchy for this, right? So if each one of these is a header, maybe we have subheaders of the questions and the method, results throughout, but just thinking about structuring that poster so that we can step through that hierarchy, and the user understands, okay, this is what I'm getting in this, and then I have all of the supporting body information, and then ultimately get my call to action. Now, for these guidelines, these aren't like set in stone, but these are things that we want to set up for people so that there is at least a baseline for when you're working on an academic poster, so that we have text that's going to be legible at these larger sizes, right? So think about a large poster that's like 3 feet by 4 by 6, right? If we're talking about those 48 by 36 inch sizes, if your title is too small, people aren't going to be able to read it from that 10 feet area. So what you want to do is make sure that the titles are large enough and your headers are large enough that they're easily readable from those longer distances, so that you are able to draw users in. And then we're talking about making sure that we're concise with our information. Just because this is all of your research doesn't mean it all needs to go on your poster. At the end of the day, you are the representation of your research, of your data, and your poster. And if somebody's interested in what you've done, you're there with your poster. You can always give them that extra information. If this is a virtual poster presentation, then you are there to present virtually, or the supporting information will be on the website that it's posted on, that the poster is posted on. So you'd have that extra information there. And then we always want to include images, graphs to break things up. And this is how we also create that visual hierarchy, right? We're not just doing a wall of text. We're having supporting imagery and supporting photos and diagrams and things like that to give our poster that a little bit of extra, so that there is something that's drawing the user in visually as you go through your designs. And then for poster size, we talk about all these items here. 48 by 36. All of our templates that we have and that we can provide are 48 by 36, so that anyone is able to print at that size. It's a pretty standard poster size. We do see 56 by 40, but we do work in 48 by 36 because it's a little bit more manageable for us to use. So the two programs that we're going to talk about and that we'll jump into in a second are Adobe Express, where we can start from a template, use drag and drop layouts, graphics, icons, and it's easy to use and easy to collaborate. And then we're going to talk about using PowerPoint. So PowerPoint lets us do a poster with an easy to understand and use tool that people might already be familiar with. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through Adobe Express and then go through some additional information here. So what I will do is let me switch here and then picture. As I switch my source, I'm just going to switch to a separate laptop so I can bring up the presentation. Okay, so this is Adobe Express. So what we're going to do is, like I said before, if you do not have Adobe Express, you can go to shu.edu/Adobe to sign up. But Adobe Express is great because what it does is a lot of the Adobe Creative Suite applications, a lot of them, they don't have a lot of like templates and like, I'll call it like the hand holding, right? It doesn't have the easy to get set up, easy to start like Photoshop or InDesign. Amazing tools, and you can do amazing things in them. But if you're someone who's not, doesn't have the technical background or the creative background and you're just jumping into it, Express will do a lot of like the hand holding for you and help you get started. So when you log in, you're going to see a bunch of templates. Express is great because it's able to be used for anything from social media to video production to audio editing. We can make a resume. We do a lot of, we recommend a lot for students to use the resume builder in Adobe Express because it's great. It'll give you a really great template to start with and differentiate your resume from all of the ones that everyone else is using from templates in like, Word or something like that. It'll at least give you a little bit of a leg up. So when you come into Express, we can create a new. and I can create a print document. I can go through all of my different templates here. So I can get started with a template. I can start from blank, but I just want to show you through some of the options here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a template that I have created so we can at least have some content in here. So this is an academic poster template at 48 by 36. Now it just has some placeholder images in it. And what we'll do is go through and talk about the template. So this will let us show you some of the tools and some of the things that are on the toolbar here. So anytime I open up Adobe Express, on the left-hand side, I have my main menu. I can add content. So I can add any media. Elements is like shapes and icons. The great thing about Adobe Express is it gives us access to all of the stock photography and icons that are available within Adobe Stock. So within the free version of Adobe Express, you do get some images, but because we have access to Adobe Stock, you can use that for your presentations here and pull up any icons and images that you might need. We have these just placeholder images. These are from Adobe Stock, but it's just strawberries just to have something in our poster presentation here. So that's how I'm adding content, anything I add to the page. And then so if I add something to the page, if I click on it, then my context-sensitive menu on the left-hand side here changes, and then I can go ahead and edit. So if I double-click in here, I can then edit any of my text that's in here, or then on the left-hand side, I could go ahead and change things like the size, the font, the color, all of that given to me here in these in the palettes that show up as I'm going through and editing. And then, yeah, so anytime I click an item, that palette on the left-hand side now changes. So then I have options for editing my my imagery, changing the imagery, adding imagery, or even just like adding effects. Like if I wanted to make something grayscale, right? It's always great to be able to work like non-destructively on my images. So what I mean by that is not change. So if I did want to make this grayscale, right, it's better for me to do it in the program rather than to do it in Adobe Photoshop or some other program, because then I'm saving it as a JPEG and then losing my original image. Whereas if I do it in the program, I always have the option to then go back and say, wait a minute, I want to actually get rid of that and say, let's keep that image. And if I wanted to then change out an image here, what I can do is if I right click on anything, it gives me also my context sensitive options, and I could then replace that image, and I could do it from an upload. So then I can then go and upload. I think I have some images of the University Center here. Yeah, like if I wanted to do something Seton Hall themed, open that in there. Now the image is uploaded and it's in there. And you see it has this frame around here. If I double click, then I get my options to then move my image within the frame. I'm going to actually crop this image by using the drag handles here and then making it larger and then placing it within the frame. So if I wanted to do a creative crop there and have it closer, I can do that. And the great thing is I'm editing non-destructively, right? So I still have the rest of my image shadowed out here, and then I can make my changes and then go through. The other thing about Express is this is a multi-page document, and it's multi-page because I have two options for my template here. So if I wanted to use this for my poster template, I could do that. And then I also have my layers palette here. So what the layers does in any of the Adobe application, it allows me to then go through and change the layering of any of the items. So I can do this as an example. So if I drag this over here, you can see that this now appears on top of the text. But if I was doing something like a photo background and I wanted this to appear below, what I could do is right click and send to back. And what that does is that just sends it all the way to the bottom in my layers palette here so that it goes below the other text items there. So then the text can appear beneath it. Now, obviously I can't read that text there, but for something like this color block, obviously the color block I want it to appear all the way at the bottom so that I can place text on top of it and not have it be hidden behind the box. So always helpful to think about that. Think about your layers palette, right? And then I can then just drag things above one another so that I know things are going to appear on top of on top of other items on my canvas. It's a good way to think about it. Think of the layers as like panes of glass stacked up on top of one another, and I'm creating or painting on top of it, and any area that's not painted shows through, right? So like if this image was like a circle with a hole in the middle, like obviously the text on below it would then show through the hole in the center of the circle. So we're thinking about Express and editing our posters. Obviously, once I go in here, everything is just drag and drop, so I can drag my items around. You can certainly start from a blank template, but what I'm doing here is working off of this template and then just editing. So like if this was my introduction, it's as simple as typing in that space and then copying and pasting any supporting content that I had in here. So just giving the options to use an easy web-based program to then share and work on my my academic presentation. And then one of the other things here in Adobe Express is the brands. So what's great about the brands is I can create, think of it as just like my, it's my, basically a template, right? That I can then create my own, where I can put my own fonts and colors so that I can put in any of the fonts and colors that I want to have. So I have a test here that just has some of the Seton Hall University items in it that I just use for my own personal projects, but you can see that I have like the set colors. So if I do this in Adobe Express, I can get all of those colors, and then fonts, I can use them across my projects. So if you're working on multiple things, say you have a poster and like a companion flyer, like a handout, it might be good to create like a brand for your poster so that you can go in and then add colors, add fonts. And when you're adding a color, it's just as simple as just going in the color picker and then adding it in there. So just another way to go through and work on consistency throughout your projects and throughout the things that you're putting together. So if I go through here and I'm moving my items around and I'm set with my poster design, there's two ways that I can then share if I'm done with the poster. So if I hit the share button, I can add somebody to this, give them a preview link. I can download this. Or if I wanted to add it so they could work on it with me, we could work on it together, right? So I can control who can access it. But anybody that I type in that has a Seton Hall University email address, we could then work on it together with them. But if I was thinking about this poster and going to print, what I want to do is I want to go to download. So if I'm all done, I know I'm ready. I want to go to download and then PDF, best for printing. And then I can click download. So what this will do will give me a download of the poster as a PDF in the actual size that I'm designing it. So this template I designed at 48 by 36. And when you start from a blank template, you can set your page size there. So that's what I'm doing. I won't do crop marks or bleed marks because I don't have any in my document. That's for the printer if I have like overhang and I'm printing edge to edge. That's what the bleed marks would be. If I have, say this blue box, I had it extending past the edge so that I knew that we were cutting it off so that it was full. That's if we were doing that. So what I'll do now is I'm going to, let me switch again. We do have a few resources that we can share through the university. We have, like I said, if you go to shu.edu/Adobe, you can find some of the Adobe created workshops and learning experiences that they have. And then also LinkedIn Learning you can access through your university account through PirateNet. So there's also some resources there. So if you go to the university website and search up either Adobe or LinkedIn, you'll find information about both of those services and how you can get additional training options for those. So what I'll do now is I do have the PowerPoint version of this poster open. So this is a PowerPoint version of just other options that we used to offer for Petersheim, but just so you can get a sense. These are also 48 by 36 if I go to my slide size. So just to give you an understanding, these are just PowerPoint slides, but we just size them to be the size of the poster so that anybody who's already familiar with PowerPoint and you want to use PowerPoint to create your poster, you can certainly do that. So what we'll do is step through, and it's the same principle, right? If I'm editing here, I have my home menu. I can click through, but you can see that we have a hierarchy set up for these different items so that there is, on this example, we're asymmetrically balanced. We're drawing in the user's eye through the poster title, the imagery. This is all placeholder, so whatever your poster is about or your research is about, you would want to change all of the imagery and put some graphs in here, whatever it is. But you can see that from a design standpoint, we're leading in with a really large title, color block, the color contrast between the dark Seton Hall blue and the white, the image to draw the eye, and then we're asymmetrically balanced on this to the left-hand side to purposely draw in the viewer's eyes as they're walking through. And then as they go left to right, read the content of the poster, and then land hopefully on our call to action down here. That would be the final call to action for our poster. So just another option. Anyone who attended the sessions here at the Innovation Hub, we'll make the templates available to you. But just another option for people to go ahead and go through their designs and create something in Adobe Express or within Adobe PowerPoint. Included with Adobe Express is I mentioned earlier, we do have Adobe Stock. So Adobe Stock is Adobe's stock photography licensing software. So luckily, with the Adobe license we have through Adobe Creative Campus, Adobe Stock, so it's stock.adobe.com, and you can go there, and you can, so everybody, faculty, students, staff has access to Adobe Stock. If you go to stock.adobe.com, you can then search for imagery. So if I was doing something on tiger sharks and I wanted to find some images, that's what my research was about. The images will come up. And if I'm logged in, which I am, with my account that I got at shu.edu/Adobe, I can see that these images are available for me to use through the education license. So a lot of times with posters, I know we have issues with students and faculty trying to find images that they have the rights to use. Obviously, we would still cite our sources and cite that we got these from Adobe Stock, but these, because we have licensing through Adobe, we're able to use these, and actually we're able to get really large images. So this is an 8,000 pixel wide image. So not only do we run into issues when people need to have the Adobe, need to have the license and the copyright license to actually use something, that's the one benefit, but also because this is such a high resolution image, it is going to print crystal clear. So whatever your research is on, say if I'm on like the rainforest, we have a huge library of images that are available for anybody to use within the Adobe Stock license. So it's a great resource that we want to make sure that people know and use here in at Seton Hall. If you have access to Adobe Stock, and then you'll know you have licenses to it if you click it, and then it gives you the education license. Some things may not be available, but it's kind of like trial and error. You can go ahead and check it out, but the majority of images are included. And the licenses extend to students to be able to use for research, classroom, anything that's happening in the classroom. And then for faculty and staff, they can use any work related to the campus. The licenses just don't allow anybody use for imagery for anything that they're doing outside of campus work. So if you're doing like a freelance project or something like that, something that's outside, you would not be able to use imagery. So it's related to Seton Hall University coursework, research, and then university work for admin, staff, and faculty. So just one of the other resources we like to show when people are running their or creating their academic posters. I hope that the principles that we've walked through today have been helpful, and that like we've kind of given you a baseline for what you can do here. Obviously, we run sessions here at the Innovation Hub, but if there are any questions, please go to shu.edu/Adobe or reach out to us here at the Teaching Learning Technology Center. Thank you so much. That's been the academic poster presentation, design tips and tricks. We hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.